All right, joining me tonight on Reality Check is Omar Abdullah is with me, leader, of course, of the National Conference and former Chief Minister, Jammu and Kashmir. Thanks very much indeed, Omar Abdullah, for joining us. Now, you just possibly saw and heard Nazir's report there. Of course, Nazir could only go to some places, and he did sense this difference between North and South Kashmir. But you would have information coming in from a much wider spectrum of your candidates or Gupkar Alliance candidates. How widespread is this phenomenon that they are being held while the BJP and its proxies are allowed to campaign? And also, have you complained to this, to any officialdom?
This situation that Nazir has reported has actually been in existence for more than a week now. And we are trying to knock on doors in the government, but so far without any success, because all we are told is that they're being kept for security reasons and they're free to campaign, which is a blatant lie. Unfortunately, after the 5th of August last year, if there's one thing the administration in Jammu and Kashmir has learnt, it's to tell lies, and to tell lies with an absolute straight face. They have done it relentlessly since the 5th of August 2019, and this is just another shining example of the lies that this administration is telling. The stories that Nazir has reported from South Kashmir are actually repeated in the north. They're repeated in Central Kashmir. The assembly constituency that I had the honor of representing, called Birwa, in Central Kashmir, just on the outskirts of Srinagar, two of my candidates are locked up and unable to campaign, whereas their rival candidates are free to campaign wherever they like. A lot of them have security allotted to them from the government. This election is fast descending into what can only be called a farce. Now, I don't understand. What was the need to have this election? Nobody was demanding it. If the environment, if the security situation is not conducive for an election, then why this ego hassle? Why are you trying to show that things are so normal when clearly they aren't? An election requires candidates to go out and campaign. Otherwise, how is it an election?
But tell me, Omar, what about the leadership of the Gupkar Alliance? Are you, people like yourself, free to campaign? Because Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi of the BJP was out there today. We'll just put up those pictures as we hear your answer, campaigning. Are you, Mehbooba Mufti, others, are you allowed to go out and campaign?
No, I'm sure we can go out and campaign, but who will we campaign for if we don't have our candidates with us? I mean, people aren't, at the end of the day, yes, we are leading the political parties, but we are not the candidates in this election. We can only go out and ask for votes for our candidates. But if our candidates are not out, if our candidates are locked away, if they're not free to campaign, and look at the blatant lies that are coming from the opposition candidates. You yourself heard in Nazir's report, the BJP candidate from Shupaiya saying that, oh, the Gupkar Alliance is not able to find candidates, that's why they're not on the field. There is not a single area where we have not been able to field candidates. The only thing is that our candidates aren't able to actually go out and introduce themselves to people.
Right. Now, this election seems to have, I mean, it's a district level election, it's also panchayat elections, but it seems to have gotten escalated. We all saw Amit Shah's Twitter storm calling all of you Gupkar gang, which is terrible use of language, by the way, especially coming from the Home Minister. But you said that this whatever you want to call it, Twitter outburst he had was linked to this election. That because he felt that all of you were going to boycott it, and then finally you decided not to.
Well, clearly, I mean, he was commenting about two statements, one that came from my father many weeks ago, one that came from Mehbooba a few weeks after that, both of which he had ample opportunity to talk about well before yesterday. So the fact that he chose to speak up yesterday about both these controversies in itself indicates to you that this is purely about the elections, and it's frustration boiling over. Because they had been led to believe that the Gupkar Alliance would not take part in this election, that the People's Alliance for the Gupkar Declaration would boycott, and that would give them two advantages. One, of course, it would leave the field open for their candidates to sweep whatever election was going to take place. But more importantly, it would give them a propaganda tool to beat us with. They would go around telling everybody, look, they get their instructions from Pakistan. Earlier, it was the Hurriyat that was boycotting elections. Now it's the People's Alliance. And there is no difference between the two. These people take their directions from Pakistan and they are separatists. So the fact that we haven't obliged them on either of these counts
Yes.
was the result of that was the frustration that came from the Honorable Home Minister yesterday.
But one thing I do want to ask you, though, is about this comment that he's made about this so-called global link to Gupkar gang. Many of the other BJP leadership has also picked it up, which is a reference to your father's interview to India Today. This is the quote we found online, and tell me if this is correct, that he reportedly said that they, China, said till you restore, possibly referring to China, that till you restore Article 370, we won't stop because it has now become an open issue. May Allah wish that our people get help from their might, again possibly referring to China, and that our Articles 370 and 35A get restored. Did he say this?
He was referring purely to Allah helping the people of Jammu and Kashmir get back what was snatched from them on the 5th of August 2019.
Okay.
It suits the BJP to twist those words around to create a narrative which they then sell in the rest of the country. They've used it to browbeat the Congress very effectively. The Congress, which was a founding member of the People's Alliance for the Gupkar Declaration, is now too afraid to openly come out and to be a part of this alliance simply because of the propaganda machinery of the BJP. So I mean, those statements have been
he was not
explained
referring
and
to China.
adequately
Your father
already. I'm not going to get into that again.
Okay. Okay. But just one thought that struck me, Omar, which is that given the connotations around Gupkar, the term Gupkar, and the possibility that it could now be...
Vasu, please explain to me the connotations around Gupkar, because
let me finish the question.
I've been hearing this about how
let me
because we
okay, let me finish the question.
It has nothing to do with where our addresses happen to be. Don't you oftentimes name declarations after the place where it takes place?
Of course.
I mean, you have let me cite
allowing you to finish the question
agreement on climate.
Okay, go ahead.
Closer to home, you have the Simla Agreement, you have the Tashkent Agreement,
you
have the Wuhan Declaration. So the meeting from which this declaration emanated took place on Gupkar Road. So it was called the Gupkar Declaration. What's wrong with it?
Listen, I'm not saying anything's wrong with it. If you'd allow me to ask my question, which I'll try to do now, is that there are terms which then lend themselves by your rivals to be twisted and given a negative connotation, just like Lutyens is given a whole twist here in the context of Delhi. And I was just wondering whether when you were naming the alliance, whether you weighed the pros and cons of that whether you felt that here was a term which could then be turned into this kind of, symbol of elitism or whatever you call it, and whether that was something you considered at all, strategically.
We are the People's Alliance. What is wrong with being the People's Alliance?
Right.
We are the People's Alliance. We represent the people of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh, which includes Leh and Kargil. So we are the People's Alliance for the Gupkar Declaration because that was the original document. But we are ultimately the People's Alliance. That's what we are.
Okay. Okay. All right. Omar, given that this is the first election, in a sense, since the abrogation, is this election, is the outcome of this election, in a sense, going to be a referendum of public opinion on the abrogation?
Well, I hadn't seen it that way, but clearly the way the BJP has taken it, they seem to have elevated it into some sort of a referendum. The fact that the Home Minister of India has weighed in on District Development Council elections in a union territory is in itself something that I've not seen before. And then union ministers coming and campaigning for District Development Council elections, again in a union territory, I've not seen before. So it's not the People's Alliance that has elevated this to some sort of referendum. It seems that the BJP wants it to be a referendum. And if that is the case, then so be it. I'm not averse to that.
Okay. But you'd said, quite some time back, that you will not contest elections till statehood is restored to Jammu and Kashmir. We don't know when elections, if at all, will be held in Jammu and Kashmir, but as and when they do you still stand by that?
This is not about my election. This is as far removed from my election as it is possible to be. These are district development council elections. Why are we confusing the two?
No, I'm just asking.
I have no intention of fighting elections for the foreseeable future. But again, that is irrelevant to what we are currently engaged in, which is the district development council elections.
Okay, fair enough. But what would you say that to your critics who would say that the decision initially by the People's Alliance was not to fight these elections, but then you were worried that this may push you into a kind of political irrelevance, and that's why you changed your mind?
Really? And where are they privy to these discussions? Because I have been a part of every single meeting of the People's Alliance.
Okay.
And I don't recall a single meeting where the decision not to participate in these elections was taken.
Okay. So it was, you were always,
this is clearly the figment
fight
of somebody's imagination. Obviously, we always had the option of not contesting. That option is available to everybody, but it is not an option that we considered, and it is not an option that we exercised.
Right. So in conclusion then, as we stand today, when you look at the way this has actually played itself out, you know, the fact that there's all this conflict over candidates not being allowed to go out and all of that, how do you see this shaping up? You said you have raised this with authorities, but frankly, which authority really is there in Jammu and Kashmir to address this?
Well, none. There is no authority in Jammu and Kashmir, unfortunately. The authorities in Jammu and Kashmir don't decide what they can eat for breakfast without clearance from Government of India.
Okay.
So what is happening in Jammu and Kashmir is at the behest of Government of India. So I don't know which doors we can knock on for this. Perhaps the way in which it's been highlighted in the media may resolve this issue to some extent, because I truly do not expect the administration in Jammu and Kashmir to do anything about it, because, as I said, if there's one thing they have learned after the 5th of August 2019 very effectively, it's to lie, and to lie blatantly.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see how it plays out. But Omar Abdullah, I appreciate you joining us on Reality Check. Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Vasu.